Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damlola Ogunshaki. This morning on Today in the News, I'll be reviewing the front pages of the dailies and also analyzing them. And I'm starting with Vanguard on the paper review. Vanguard is leading with Tinubu bids to form government of national unity. South East, South South being considered for Senate presidency to provide direction for zoning, speakership and others. Meeting sensitive to religious balancing. Bajabi Amila tipped as chief of staff, Governor Erufai and SGF. Tinubu's support groups ruled for Betara as speaker. You can see that story on page 5. On page 20, man market operators, others list agenda for incoming government. Removal of fuel subsidy, multiple exchange rates, privatization rank high. We seek balance of attention between money, capital markets that's coming from stockbrokers, multiple taxation, others must be addressed to boost investors' confidence. A man is saying that as Fidelity Bank chairman calls for return of margin lending. On page 15, gas flare commercialization program threatened that according to investigation as a NUPRC pledges completion. On page 9, NUT, NANS, NAPTAN, ASUP, Konua set agenda for Tinubu in education sector. Lukman better than Osimhen, that's coming from Peseiro. Kogi Women Forum calls for cancellation of presidential National Assembly elections. Withdraw threat to short broadcast station, Sarah tells Buhari. Rising demand, Edo refinery orders of 150,000 barrels of crude. Stories above on page 4. NDLEA nabs ex-Boko Haram fighter, monarch, 35 others over drug trafficking. Oil spill. Shell incidents rise 100% to 12 in 1 month. That's according to reports. Alcohol will destroy you, article tells Wiki. Gunmen killed 36 in Kaduna, Katsina. You can see that on page 10. And lastly, on Vanguard newspaper, Franca Febua, Nigeria's first female senator, dies at 74. And that's all on Vanguard. Away from there, we move to the Punch newspaper. The Punch this morning is leading with governors give Malami Emefiele Tuesday ultimatum to obey Supreme Court. Failure to comply will lead to contempt charge Tuesday. Zamfara AG saying that Rivers, Kogi, Ondo, Ekiti, ACF, Mbaka knock Buhari as CBN faces fresh shoes. Old Naira rejection spread. Report says a 20 trillion Naira loss to CBN cash mop up. You can see the stories on pages 2, 21, and 22 of the Punch newspaper. And on page 4 and 5, anger as gunmen kill 35 in Castina and Kaduna. Sack lecturer, Senate threatens to stop UI funding. Stories above, Beavers reset ends today. INEC promises result transmission. Lastly, on the Punch newspaper, no going back on nationwide protest. Labour Party is saying that. You can see that on page 30 of the Punch newspaper. Away from that, we move to The Guardian. The Guardian this morning is leading with cash crunch. Economy sheds at 20 trillion naira as policy weakens productivity and SMEs. NECA says small businesses going into extinction. NLC, government undermining productivity. CPP calls on Buhari to intervene. Food factories shut down, lose billions. We use our wages to buy money for transport fare, says factory workers. You can see that on page 6. On page 6, still, Tinubu, APC leaders meet lawmakers elect in Aso Rock amid calls for Adamu's resignation. Stories above, articles 8 knocks Wike for deceiving PDP governors. And lastly, on the Punch, on the Guardian newspaper, Roadvival assures marginalized Lagos residents of better deal. You can see that on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper. And lastly, let's look at the Nation. The Nation this morning is leading with Emefiele launches fresh plot against President-elect Tinubu. CBN boss conspires with Jen on Lagos polls. Doles out 500 million naira new note to Labour Party's campaign. You can see that on page 4. Governors take tough stance on naira scarcity. Buhari's disregard for Supreme Court verdict dangerous, says ACF. NLC, TUC make cash available. You can see that on page 6. Under government, we pay 24 billion naira yearly to pensioners. OAU shift resumption to March 21st. You can see that on page 27. Stories above, 53 train box accident victims out of hospitals. You can see that on page 4. 35 killed in Kaduna Kasina attack. You can see that on page 7. Lastly, on the Nation newspaper, NDLEA intercept heroin in freezer gas cylinder at Lagos Airport. That can be seen on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. And that's all we have on the front pages of the dailies this morning. Join me after the break as our guest in the studio will be analyzing some of the stories. Welcome back. If you're just joining me, this is Today News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damilola Okunshaki. Joining me to analyze the front pages of Daily this morning is Mr. Ali Muhammad. He's the CEO of Magnet Communications, former editor of Daily Times and Concord newspaper. Good morning, Mr.
Good morning,
Ali.
Damilola. How are you?
I'm very fine. Thank you for joining us. But before we talk about the stories on the front pages this morning, let's talk about the Naira scarcity. What's been your experience with this Naira scarcity and getting Naira? Have you been doing it?
Well, I am just like an average Nigerian. As I am seated here with you, I have just 1,000 naira with me. It is sad that despite the Supreme Court's judgment ordering the circulation of the old 500 naira and 1,000 naira notes, the CBN has refused to enforce that judgment. They have refused to comply with that judgment. It is sad that a lot of people are suffering and even dying as a result of all these orchestrated financial crisis. People now use their money to buy money for them to go to work. In the United States and the UK, which they are trying to emulate with the so-called cashless policy, you still see their currencies circulating. I have seen an American with over $3,000 in his wallet. The heavens didn't fall. So you see, if truly is aiming at getting Nigeria to become a cashless society, it shouldn't be done overnight. You have to give time. You have to give time. An average Nigerian is suffering. People can't buy food. The pepper seller doesn't have an account. They don't have bank accounts. The vegetable seller don't have bank accounts. The Marwa driver don't have bank accounts. How do you expect workers to go to work without money in their pockets? It is sad that we have a government that is lawless. When there is lawlessness, you are inviting anarchy.
That's why the fact that CBN have not said that people should start receiving the old Naira notes and all that. Some state governors have been saying that people can spend the money and
But the banks are not
like Governor Sanwo-Olu now. He said that retailers especially and business owners should be accepting the old Naira notes. But banks and fuel stations and all that, they are not accepting.
They are not accepting. That is the sad aspect of the governors are just saying what they are saying because they are part of the Supreme Court case that gave judgment against the federal government of Nigeria. But the central bank and the banks are not accepting they are not enforcing the judgment of the Supreme Court. It is sad. The Constitution of Nigeria allows for checks and balances. The executive will check the legislature will check the executive, and the judiciary will check both the legislature and the legislature and the executive in case they over-exercise their powers. This is one glaring case of the judiciary performing its duties according to the Constitution of Nigeria. But unfortunately, the executive arm of government is refusing to accept and implement the judgment of the Supreme Court. This is a call to anarchy. What happens if Nigerians decide to start a very wild protest that can consume the nation? They will have a basis for doing that because the government itself is lawless. It shows that this government doesn't have sympathy for the ordinary Nigerians. You can talk about the big boys that still have access to the new notes. What about the pepper seller at the market? What about the bus drivers that don't have bank accounts? How do you want them to survive? Last Friday, I read the story of a radio station staff that died while queuing for some money to go to the office. He didn't get the money and he eventually slumped and died. We've had situations like this. We've had people that have committed suicide because they can't feed. Within this period, there is somebody that I know who works in my wife's office. He committed suicide on Thursday stroke Friday night. So we have to be careful how we punish the people. A lot of these people that are going through this nasty experience are going through it for the first time in their lives. They probably are satisfied with their 30,000 naira salary that comes in and at the right time, and they are able to access that 30,000 without any problem. But now they are on 30,000, they can't even access 1,000 from their monthly salaries. It is embarrassing.
All right, let's move away from that and discuss other things on the front pages of the dailies this morning. And coming after the presidential election, which outcome is perceived in some quarters as controversial, the moves were the president-elect, that's Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, has been elected to form a government of national unity. The moves were ultimately initiated to calm frayed nerves around the country and reunite the people. What do you think about this moves from
Well,
the
to me,
president-elect?
it is a good move if he can go ahead and form a government of national unity. Just like they have said, it will calm a lot of frayed nerves. The agitations from different parts of the country will reduce because people will have a sense of belonging in government, not like we've had in the past where key positions were given to some people from a certain part of the country while other parts of the country don't have anything at all. But in a situation where we have a government of national unity, that means all the ethnic groups will be represented in government. If that is what they want to do, then it is the right step in the right direction. Because as it is now, a lot of agitations are coming up from different parts of the country. From the east, people are angry that Obi did not win the election. From the north, some people are angry that Atiku didn't win the election. But if we have a government of national unity and everybody have a sense of belonging, that grudge, that agitation will reduce. And the government will have time to concentrate more on how to move the country forward economically, how to move the country forward in terms of security, that the security challenges that we have been facing in the last almost 10 years. You can imagine the number of people that would have been killed by militants, Boko Harams, terrorists from different parts of Sahara African countries. I think we should think about all these problems and encourage the president-elect to go ahead, if it truly means to form a government of national unity, to go ahead and do that.
Okay, another issue that we will discuss today is that is expected to be discussed is the zoning of the speakership of the 10th house. Okay, so let's not forget that it's the Muslim tickets that won this
Yes,
government election,
yes.
and the fact that some people are saying that now they should consider a Christian for the position. But according to reports that we're getting, is that five lawmakers they are just currently just in for the position of the speaker without recourse to either religious sentiment or geopolitical zone. What do you think about this?
You see, just like I said, there is a Muslim ticket as part, and we have grudges,
Yeah.
even from Christians. We have grudges. The incoming government must take deliberate steps to assuage this feeling of being cheated in terms of appointments and the Muslim ticket that brought the president and his vice to power. A lot of things have been said, a lot of fears have been expressed, especially by Christians, that they won't have a pride of place in the Muslim a government with Muslim tickets. And so it will be a good step if the new government is able to distribute political appointments evenly without consideration for ethnicity or religion. Just give the job to those who are qualified and ensure that both religious divides are satisfied by such appointments. Because if we have lopsided appointments like we've had in the past during the Buhari administration that didn't give any regards for whether you are from the southwest, the east, and only concentrated all the appointments in the north, then we will be looking for a big trouble if we don't ensure that the two major religions in Nigeria are satisfied and carried along in the administration of this country under the new dispensation that we are approaching. So we must ensure that the Christian community have implicit confidence in the Muslim ticket government that is coming in. Otherwise, they won't have it easy. So you must create a situation where where the Christians will trust the two Muslims in government. They can they should be able to have access to them at the slightest snap of the finger and get their complaints resolved as soon as possible. Anything short of that, the Christians will say, yes, we told you that these people cannot be trusted, that the Muslims cannot be trusted. But I want to believe that those coming into government have taken cognizance of the fact that they need the confidence of the Christian community to govern in peace. Because we've known what religious crises have done to this country in the past. And we don't want such things to happen again. It is the most violent form of struggle, religious struggle. It is the most violent. People will not care who is going to be killed. Once they see you as belonging to a particular religious sect, they go ahead and attack you. We don't want such a situation to happen in Nigeria of today.
All right, despite the lingering controversies surrounding this presidency and all that, we have market operators, others, they've listed their agenda for the incoming government. But before we talk about the one, let me ask you this: what are your expectations from the incoming government?
Well, the situation of this country is obvious to every discerning human being. Every right-thinking human being knows that the country is at the precipice. And if care is not taken and there is a slip into crisis, then I don't know where over 200 million Nigerians want to run to in Africa. And so this incoming government must take steps to ensure that the common man, the masses, are well taken care of economically, politically. They must be considered in whatever decisions they are taking. We need to improve our health institutions. Instead of having all our leaders running abroad, we must improve on our health institutions in such a way that people can stay in Nigeria and get treated for whatever ailment that they may have. Even abroad, if you go to their hospitals, Nigerian doctors are the ones consulting for them. In some hospitals, in fact, in most hospitals in UK and in the United States, Nigerian doctors are the ones consulting for them. Why do we have that situation? Because we don't have enough equipment in our hospital. Look at Lasot, for instance. There are 2 test centers there. One that is designed for the common man, the equipment don't ever work. The other one where you have to pay and pay very well if you want to be tested, and whatever your problems are will be resolved, you have to pay far higher than what is obtainable in the other laboratory. We shouldn't have that kind of situation. Everybody should have access to good medical care in every hospital in Nigeria. You go to some hospitals, they are not better than a dispensary clinic where you just go and treat little things. But you will get to those hospitals that are named General Hospital, and you discover that they have nothing to show for the name that they bear. They are just there like a consulting health center. Even health centers abroad are better than some of the general hospitals that we have in Nigeria. Why do we have such situations? Because half of the funds that are supposed to go for the upgrading of these hospitals go into private pockets. The earlier we stop the stealing of public funds, then we will be able to develop Nigeria. We've had situations where money meant for the purchase of arms and ammunition to fight Boko Haram were pocketed. Till today, nothing has come out of it. Those people who pocketed such money are moving around as if nothing happened. So the incoming government must also fight impunity. Impunity means not punishing people for the offenses they commit. If you don't punish people for the offenses they commit, there is no how you can reduce corruption. There is no how you can reduce criminal activities in your society. So if Mr. A commits a serious crime, he must not sit down and assume that I have a big man up there that can assist me. You understand? Yes. Every human being, no matter who you are, must get punished for the offenses that they commit. If you have impunity, it will be difficult to maintain discipline. But if impunity is eradicated in any society, people in such a society will be disciplined. They will think twice before they commit crimes. Let me cite an instance. No, I'm serious. The problems we have in Nigeria is impunity, and it is causing 70% of the problems we have in Nigeria. Boko Haram, a lot of people have been arrested and freed. People who killed in the southwest, who were found to be from a particular tribe in Nigeria, will be freed and transferred to their region, where they will walk away as free men. All that should stop.
All right, you seem to have a lot of expectations from this incoming government. But let's talk about some of the things that they mentioned. They said elimination of petrol subsidy and multiple exchange rate system, as well as execution of the fiscal reforms, including elimination of multiple taxation. They also recommend, privatization of non-performing public enterprises and means adoption of public-private partnership model for infrastructure. And they want the government to balance its attention on both money markets and capital market development while stimulating liquidity in the latter.
It's a long one, but let me start from one particular policy in those policies that you listed, and that is the deregulation and lifting of what do they call it, of payment of subsidy, cancellation of subsidy. I am an advocate for the cancellation of the payment of subsidy on petroleum products, but you will cause a major crisis if you eradicate subsidy without having refineries in this country. If you don't have refineries and you eradicate subsidy, that means the price of fuel will go to about 500 naira per liter, because you don't have functional refineries in this country. And that will lead to a major problem. It may be the first problem that this new administration may encounter. Because if you are if you are deregulating the downstream sector of the petroleum industry in Nigeria, you must create a level playing field in that sector. If you want to import fuel, yes, you are free to import, but you must have locally refined products in Nigeria to successfully remove subsidy without creating a crisis. If there are no refineries, if you remove subsidies, the price will go to 600 naira per liter if we still continue to import. I am not saying don't remove subsidy, but let us have refineries, modular refineries, at least 10 before you do that, so that we also have locally produced petroleum products. So here, an oil producing country without functional refineries, we have 4 gigantic refineries that got billions of naira every year or perhaps every month, and those refineries produces nothing, and people are kept there, they are paid their huge salaries, and yet people continue to suffer for petroleum products. My advice to the new government is to expedite action on the creation of refineries. Allow private organizations to create refineries. Let them approve licenses to them to operate refineries immediately. Modular refineries are not difficult to build, like the gigantic one that has taken Dangote almost 4 or 5 years to build. And I'm sure that the incoming government is talking about removing subsidy because it is relying on Dangote refinery. Dangote refinery alone cannot solve the problem of petrol production in Nigeria. So if you have private refineries with Dangote refineries and probably reactivate the 4 refineries that we have, then you have created a good ground for the deregulation of the downstream sector of the petrol, the oil industry. What will we have if the regulation is done without refineries? Is a crazy price for the refined products that we import. So you are creating an opportunity for a few people to the disadvantage of majority of Nigerians. That is what it will be. But as a car owner, I have no choice but to buy it. But it will have a spiral effect. The inflation that will follow will have a spiral effect on everything we're going to be having in Nigeria. So the government should think well before the deregulation, before the removal of subsidy. I am not saying don't remove subsidy, but let me have access to locally produced petroleum products. Let Damilola have access to locally produced petroleum products and not imported products. Look at the rate of the dollar to naira. It's almost 800, if not more. So if you remove subsidy and thinking that the price of the dollar will rise, no, it won't affect the dollar. Dollar will remain the same because by removing subsidy, the demand for the dollar will now increase. It will increase. It's not going to reduce. But if you produce things that are exported and are paid for in dollars, it will bring down the dollar price. Because you are also having dollar everywhere. You are earning dollar on whatever you are exporting. Now you are exporting crude. Half of the crude that you are exporting are stolen during transportation by thieves that you cannot catch. Yet we have a navy, a naval system in place that should be in charge of everything that is called exports from Nigerian shores to other parts of the world.
All right, so you have time fast spent, but I just want us to quickly talk about this one. A surrendered and rehabilitated ex-fighter of Boko Haram terrorist group,
Mm,
Alayi Madu, and the traditional ruler of Kajola,
mm,
Bale Akinola Adebayo, are among 37 persons arrested over 2.2 tons of illicit drugs seized by operatives of NDLEA at Muritala Mohammed Airport, Lagos, and in raids across 12 states in the past week. Now, talking about the rehabilitated ex-fighter and also the traditional ruler, most times when we're talking about ways to get rid of, to reduce insecurity issues in Nigeria, we've been told that it should include the monarchs, as they are the ones closer to the people. But now this is a monarch who is
mm.
linked to drug trafficking. What do you think about this? And also,
Damilola,
rehabilitated.
the truth of the matter is that those who don't have money can't trade in drugs because drugs involve huge sums of money that you and I may not have. And those who don't have some lords that they think will come out and protect them don't go into drug trading. Those who are into drug trading are big boys, traditional rulers, and all the kind of people that have been caught. The Boko Haram man that was caught probably have access to a lot of money from kidnapping, from so many illicit acts. He will have access to a lot of money, and he will also want to earn more through illicit activities. So I am not surprised that the NDLEA have been able to arrest the people that have been arrested who are supposed to be top guys in the society. Like I said, those kind of trades are not for the poor. They are for the so-called big boys. So you see, it's a thing of joy that government is getting close to those who are behind the big drug trade in the country. And the lesson that I see here is that as a human being, don't emulate anybody because you don't really know what they do to make those money that they are spending anyhow. The only thing that you know is what you do that gives you money, but you don't know what the other man is doing. We've seen kidnappers, a church pastors that was arrested for kidnapping people. Same for Muslim imams that have been arrested for the same offense. So when you have a situation like this, you sit down and start wondering about the involvement of the so-called religious men in our society. And you start wondering where to run to. I mean, religious places are supposed to be where you run to when you have a crisis. When those who are in these areas are the ones dragging people into crisis, then you start wondering what to do. Like I said, impunity has been part of the problems of this country for a very long time. Those that have been arrested must be punished appropriately for their crimes to serve as a deterrent to others. But by fear, take note, this first mention of this case may just be the last if care is not taken, because you don't hear about follow-ups. All you just hear is that they have been arrested, and that ends it, because the organization want to be credited. The organization want to be applauded for doing a good job, but they don't ever follow up with those cases in the media. Let us know when you are taking them to court. Let us know what the court is saying. Let us know whether they have been jailed or not. But I have had a lot of cases like this that they don't even come back to feed us with an update on those cases. It shouldn't be so. If you announce the arrest of a traditional ruler and an ex-Boko Haram fighter, let us follow up with announcements on their trials, and let us know when they are jailed. Then we can clap for that organization. It's not about merely
Just arrested them.
announcing that they've been arrested, and tomorrow you will see the person that have been arrested in town buying 2 million naira wristwatch, and you start getting scared that they've arrested that man before. How did he come out? That is impunity. It should stop under this new administration. We need a serious leader that can put Nigeria on the same path with other growing African nations. I hope the president-elect will do that.
All right, let's end this on a lighter note with Mr. and Mrs. And Mr. says, prices of things have gone up. Is that why you want extra money? Things are not as hard as you are painting it. And Mrs. replied, if things are not as hard, why are you shouting like this?
Because the man is feeling the pinch. So as a man, he is probably the only one giving out the money. So he's feeling the pinch. So
you need to feel it. But you also cannot blame Mrs. If you want to buy something outside now, sometimes if you want to pay with your POS or transfer, they will tell you to add extra charges to it.
But that is the funniest aspect of it. That means you are buying the naira.
You're buying it.
You are buying the naira which you want to spend instead of having direct access to your money that is kept in the bank. That is too much for the ordinary masses to bear. It's too much. A Mefiele or whatever he is called must do something about this. Or even if it is Buhari that is in charge of giving instruction to Emefiele, the plight of the ordinary Nigerians as at today, their plight is horrible. So we must do everything possible to help them.
As you said, Emefiele or whatever it's called, I just remembered something, but I think I don't want to mention that. So, thank you, Mr. Ali, for joining me this morning.
Thank you.
Yes, he's now the CEO of Magnet Communications, former editor of Daily Times and Concord newspaper. He just reviewed and analyzed some of the stories with us on the front pages of Daily. And this is where we have to draw the curtain. My name is Damlola Ogunshakin. Do well to like and follow us on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. On Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Our WhatsApp number is also displayed on your screen. Today is Monday. Have a lovely